Matthew Markinson's. So when Markinson. So
is it not Matheson?
No, it's Matthew.
Should I totally redo that whole part?
Hell no. Nope. No chance.
Sorry.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Code Red Jessep.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of whites each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information or past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, a lot of times when you ask me the question, what we're doing tonight, I always try to come up with, this is a film that's long overdue, or why we should have done it. This, people, I'm not bullshitting this time. Way back in August of 2016, when Roger and I were sitting down trying to come up with a format, what we were going to do for the podcast, I said, what's our first episode going to be? So we each put a list of 10 movies, and then we ranked them, and we kind of came up. That's how we got Big, Pretty Woman, Gremlins. The other movie that was on this list is tonight's film. It is long overdue. It's 6 years overdue. It is a huge movie that most people who always complain, you do these really weird abstract films. Nobody's ever heard of Dead Man, Tonight is the screw you, we've heard you, we're going to do it. We're going to go back for our great listener, Jeff from Canada, who asked us to do the 1992 legendary legal drama, A Few Good Men.
Well, and Jeff from Canada wrote in and said, we live in a world that has movies, and those movies have to be guarded by podcasters. Who's going to do it? You? We have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for the unreleased Batgirl film. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what we know, that our podcast is critical and our existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, entertains. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want us bickering. You need us to bicker. You use words like parody, drama, satire. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending our wipe scores. You use them as a punchline. We have neither the time nor the inclination to explain ourselves to people who rise and sleep under the blanket of the insights and non sequiturs we provide, and then questions the manner in which we provide them. We would rather that you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, we suggest you visit rogerebert.com. Thanks for indulging that. I'm a sucker for military murder mystery and courtroom drama, and this movie still holds up on both accounts. Aaron Sorkin first wrote this as a stage play. The premise, star power, and dialogue make it work. What draws me is Tom Cruise's character. Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee is apathetic, even disdainful to the practice of law and military service. He is smug, smart, but labors under his father's legacy. The movie is ultimately about Kaffee's journey from legal hustler to military courtroom professional. Thanks for taking this on and coinciding it with the 30th anniversary. Wow, A Few Good Men is 30. I feel ancient, so rejuvenate me with insights and banter. And to be honest, because I can handle the truth. Cheers, Jeff from Canada.
A Few Good Men is a 1992 legal drama based on Aaron Sorkin's 1989 play and directed by Rob Reiner. It stars an ensemble cast, including Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Pollak, J.T. Walsh, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Kiefer Sutherland. The plot follows the court-martial of 2 U.S. Marines charged with the murder of a fellow Marine. Produced by Castle Rock Entertainment, the film received acclaim for its screenwriting, direction, themes, and acting. A Few Good Men grossed more than $243 million on a budget of $40 million and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Tonight, it's A Few Good Men. Ash, we'll start with you.
This was a big movie back home when this came out. My dad loves this movie. My whole family quotes it. I feel like it's got an early, non-problematic Tom Cruise in it. But I will be honest, before my rewatch, I didn't remember like a lot about the plot other than the big quotable, "You can't handle the truth" line. Couldn't really remember what the movie was about. And I'll be honest with you, I pulled a Eugene Lyons. I flipped this with another film. I thought this was Courage Under Fire with Meg Ryan, where she dies by the tank. And I thought for some reason Tom Cruise was defending her and we couldn't handle the truth about how she died, because that's another like fairly similar film. But I am so glad it was not that movie. I am so glad it was this one. And I apologize in advance for fangirling all over the place in this episode, because I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, Big D, during our Dead Man episode, accused you of being the young one because you knew about Savage Fenty.
Yes.
But I would argue you're starting to show your age now, Ash. You're mixing up the movies. You're welcome to our world.
Yeah, it's scary.
Isn't that where Matt Damon plays like he's emaciated, he's a cancer like survivor?
He shoots up between his toes.
Oh, yeah, but he's like really skinny.
Yeah, because he's shooting up in between his toes.
Yeah, that'll do it, yeah.
It's the secret to weight loss.
Yeah, that is not as good as this film. But Ash, like you, this was a family event. And there's only 3 of them I can remember in my life. It had to be a big movie that could get buy-in from my parents, which were tough, my sister and I. One was The Godfather Part 3, not because it was good, because it was the long-awaited, finale in the trilogy. Forrest Gump was another one because it was critically acclaimed, and what family doesn't like Tom Hanks? And A Few Good Men was up there. I can remember the family got together. We went to the Largemont movie theater. We sat there and we watched it, and it was the only time I remember us all agreeing that this was a great movie. No one was disappointed. We left. It was universally loved. And it's rare to get a movie that is a box office hit and a critically acclaimed film. Man, this was a family hit. And I remember this film very well to this day.
Truly something for everyone to enjoy, because my family also unanimously loved this movie. I remember my mom and my older cousin being absolutely jazzed about this movie. And I was 12 years old. I was totally bored by it. And all I recall from my childhood is Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson yelling at each other. I thought some Rambo-style action was going to happen. It never appeared, and I was hugely disappointed. Now, as an adult, I see it in a different light. Well, Jeff, after hearing your intro, I don't know if the trailer is going to do this movie any justice, but let's get to it.
And how long have you been out of law school?
A little over a year.
Have you ever been in a courtroom?
Commander Lieutenant Kaffee successfully plea bargained 44 cases in 9 months.
One more, I get a set of steak knives.
The facts of the case are these. On midnight of September 6th, the accused entered the barracks room of their platoon mate. They tied his arms and legs with tape and forced a rag into his throat. He drowned in his own blood and was pronounced dead at 37 minutes past midnight.
I don't think you're fit to handle the defense.
You don't even know me. Ordinarily, it takes someone hours to discover I'm not fit to handle a defense.
You want to investigate me? Roll the dice and take your chances. I eat breakfast 300 yards from 4,000 Cubans who are trained to kill me, so don't think for 1 second you can come down here, flash a badge, and make me nervous.
I'll knock it all down to involuntary manslaughter, 2 years or home in 6 months.
No deal, we're going to court.
No, you're not.
Why not?
Because you'll lose.
Do you think Santiago was murdered?
Private Santiago is dead because he had no honor. And God was watching.
How do you feel about that theory?
Sounds good to me.
If this case is handled in the same fast food, slick-ass, Persian bazaar manner with which you seem to handle everything else, then something's gonna get missed.
I want to slam dunk this guy.
Danny,
I know what you're going to say. You don't have to. But we don't have to make a whole big deal out of it. You like me, I won't make you say it.
I was just gonna tell you to wear matching socks tomorrow.
Okay. Good tip.
All rise. In the heart of the nation's capital, in a courthouse of the U.S. government, we follow orders or people die. It's that simple. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Are we clear?
Crystal.
One man will stop at nothing to keep his honor, and one will stop at nothing to find the truth.
Your men follow orders or people die.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You?
At Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba, Private William Santiago breaks the chain of command and asks to be transferred away. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Markinson advocates for Santiago to be transferred, but Base Commander Colonel Nathan Jessep orders Santiago's platoon commander, Lieutenant Jonathan James Kendrick, to quote-unquote train Santiago. Santiago dies shortly afterward. Marine Lance Corporal Harold Dawson and Private First Class Loudon Downey are accused of his murder and face a court-martial. So as this movie opens up, we get these big reds, these big blues as we're going into the opening credits. And I'm like, paging Michael Mann, this is how you do color coding and an opening crime scene. When we reviewed Manhunter, which opens largely the same as this movie, we bagged on the overuse of blue and red filters and like the sanitized nature of the first killing. It was gruesome, but we didn't see much and we didn't feel much. Here, Rob Reiner shows how it's done. We get the red of that Gitmo landscape, the blue light filtering into the barracks. It's foreboding. And even though there's no blood or actual death depicted in this attack on Santiago, your heart is pounding because the situation is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it's fucking awful. Like, I didn't remember the opening of the scene being so violent. I actually thought it was one of those things where it was just implied. I didn't think we ever actually saw the attack on Santiago. And when they come in and they attack this kid, like, all I could think is, what a horrible way to wake up. Like, that would have been utterly terrifying. And the only other scene that I can remember being like this is the scene in Full Metal Jacket when they come in and they start hitting him with the soap. That reminded me so much of the scene here, but them stuffing the rag in his throat, I'm just like, oh my God, like the way you would die like that, how awful that would have been. And I am famously like really terrified of Marines thanks to movies like Full Metal Jacket. I know that there's tons of wonderful Marines out there. Thank you for your service. I think it's fantastic that you've made that sacrifice for our country, but I think that kind of commitment to killing and like, hoorah, fuck yeah, I think is really frightening. And this is why, like, these guys are fucking cruel.
So now I can only speak from my personal limited experience. You know, it varies greatly by what your duty station is, branch, MOS. Everyone has a different experience. So I don't want anybody to say that, don't take my experience as something that's widespread. I can only tell you what I saw firsthand. Because the military, it's a self-contained world. It's very much like a cult. You get indoctrinated into it in basic training. They break you down. Everyone around base is involved with the base. Everyone has the same value system. It becomes normal. You know, you buy into it early on in basic or you wash out. The Army, I can remember the values. There was loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. I didn't live it like these Marines in Gitmo do, but it becomes normal. You push the social norms aside. You're trained to believe that what you're doing is more important than civilians, than the normal people. What you're doing, you're taking on a higher responsibility, and it changes the way you think. And what they're doing to this poor like kid who can't run, it's believable to me.
Yeah, but like, I think the problem for me is I see like myself in Santiago, like I would never be able to run like that. And when he pushes him down the hill and he starts falling down the hill, I mean, it made me feel so horrible for this kid. And I'm just thinking, how the fuck did he even get assigned to this elite unit? Like, they knew he wasn't any good. How the fuck did he get assigned there? And I wanted to hug him as a mom.
I totally agree. I mean, my experience, code reds, they do exist, but they're not sustainable. And a lot of times they don't work in the way that you want them. So as an NCO, you're a non-commissioned officer, I am an adult babysitter for all of my soldiers. So you have to straighten it out. And corrective actions, a lot of times, it can get physical, but that doesn't get what you want. The kids will either go AWOL or they'll fake an injury. That does get them out of the unit, but it doesn't always work. but you got to do something. You got to do something to get these people in line, or in the end, it's cheesy. It's going to get people killed.
I mean, there in Cuba, like, yeah. I don't know. I think what was really interesting was watching this like post 9/11 and what Gitmo has become, and see it painted in this light as this like elite place for these Marines to be. But I just kept asking myself, and I'm not saying it's not legitimate or it's not realistic, but how did this work? Because I get that, Big D. I have never been in combat. I have never put myself in that kind of situation. So I can logically understand the need to rely on the person next to you and like trust them with your life. But if that's the case, why don't they just let Santiago off base? Like, he's threatening to tell on your guys. Why would you not just cut ties and let him go? For me, that seems like the path of least resistance, and it makes the most sense for the whole company. It makes the most sense for Santiago, and it makes the most sense for these men that, as you said, it might get them killed. And I think Jessep is just being cruel here because the logic doesn't work out for me why you'd keep him there.
To be clear, we're not trying to rewrite the movie, but I agree with you, Ash. It's a juicy discussion to have, right? The movie can do what it wants. We're not quibbling with the plot, but let's talk about what you should do in this situation, right? It's a peacetime deployment. There are multiple daily flights to the mainland. There's absolutely no reason to keep Santiago around. It's not like you're out in the field. You're not out in the shit in Vietnam where you can't just tell him, hey, get out of here. You need every hand on deck. He's a liability. I don't know why they're making him a project.
Well, this is a rare time I can offer, specific insight. First, to answer your question, Ash, the reason why Jessep doesn't let him go is because Santiago, it's a failure on Jessep's part. He's responsible for it. If he can't fix this just fucked up private, what the hell kind of base commander is he? When I served at the 101st, right before deploying to Kuwait, okay, one of the soldiers I had worked with for 3 years, his name was Mark Cools. He had come in as a Spec 4 like I did. He had a degree, I think, in aerospace engineering from California. Weird dude, had narcolepsy, whatever. After 9/11, he changes his name legally to Hassan Akbar and buys a bunch of firearms. This should be red flag. Hey, Hassan Akbar, we're going to get you out of the unit. You're not going to deploy. Hell no. They tried to fix him because they wanted a soldier fix. So they moved him between platoons, between squads, all failed. They eventually deployed him in Kuwait. He famously went into the command tent, killed an Air Force colonel, killed a few people, got put on trial. He's on death row still. Why would you bring Hassan Akbar, who has a personal, fucking, arsenal in his house? Why would you choose to bring him to Kuwait? It ended up getting people killed. But in the end, it's this bravado, this I'm going to fix you. You're going to become a good soldier. It's a reflection on me. A lot of times it does not make sense.
While Santiago was ostensibly killed in retaliation for naming Dawson in a fence line shooting into Cuba, United States Navy JAG Corps investigator and lawyer Lieutenant Commander JoAnne Galloway suspects Dawson and Downey carried out a code red order, a violent extrajudicial punishment. Galloway wants to defend them, but the case is given to Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee, a lawyer who loves plea bargains. Galloway is bothered by Kaffee's blasé approach, and Kaffee resents Galloway's interference.
Okay, so ever since I saw the documentary Going Clear, I have had a huge problem with Tom Cruise. And if you've not seen the documentary, please go and watch it. And so because of that, I often want to hate him. I try to avoid all of his new movies. I try to avoid him. And fuck if it doesn't kill me when I watch a film and I freaking like him. Because I do not think he's a good person in real life. I think he has hurt a tremendous amount of people and is the front for a horrible organization. But he's so damn charming in these movies. And I kick myself for buying into him so easily. And that is certainly true in A Few Good Men. Because from the outset, where you're introduced to him on that baseball field, you can't help but like him. He's young, he's smart, he's charismatic. I get why Tom Cruise, A, has had such longevity as a movie star, and B, is the front for Scientology. And Kaffee is a great role for him. It matches his style. And Kaffee's that guy. We've all known this guy. Like, he's the one that all guys like, that women want to be with. And it makes sense that he's only been in for 9 months and is already this successful. It's those annoying people that come in and can just surpass everybody that's been working for years because of how charismatic they are. And that felt really real to me.
I just wish they would have let Tom Cruise's charm be the charm of this character, because they kind of overdo it with the tropes on this guy. He's the leading man. He's got to carry around his thinking bat because that's kind of weird. He prefers his oddly unmarked Letterman jacket over his Navy uniform because he's just not a normal guy. And of course, he has to drive a vintage car because we want him to be as memorable as possible. I mean, this is just as egregious as the shit we saw in Blue Thunder. It's just modified for the 90s.
Yeah, but I like it. I think as all officers, they're inherently cocky. They feel superior to the enlisted members because they went to college. They went to West Point. They're educated. They look at everybody else as just the dumb worker ants. And I love it. Even applies into the officer's rank because you see the way the chain of command works, right? Every officer will use other people's first names as a way to demonstrate and reinforce their power or control. Danny, come here and sit down. Like, he treats him like a child because he can, and it's a way to demonstrate your superiority. And you got to remember here, Danny is carrying around a lot. Yes, he's arrogant. He's got the bat. He's got these weird mannerisms, but he's also carrying around the Kaffee family name. That's a huge burden on him that he has to live up to. And I'm glad also here that Jeff mentioned that this, I don't think, is a courtroom drama. Everybody remembers it is the typical drama. We got the criminal, we got the defendants, there's a victim, it's a procedural, there's evidence, the prosecution, defense. There's going to be a Matlock moment where we get Jessep to confess and he's going to scream. But I don't think this time watching it that that's the heart of what this movie is. I think it is a character study on Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee, on what he's afraid of, his struggles, where he's going to go in life, how he feels internally. And it's revealed throughout the movie as the plot of the murder down in Gitmo is kind of revealed. And I think that that's the core here. As he starts off in the beginning, he's happy to skate by. He's going to do his 3 years. He's going to plead everything out until Jo comes in and she questions his worth. And for the first time, he has to think, shit, am I actually doing what daddy would want? Or am I going to start to take this case serious and finally stand up for something?
I don't know. I mean, I think this is definitely a courtroom drama, right? Like, I mean, I think Tom Cruise is definitely at the heart of it, but I think this is such a good legal movie. Like, it's so much better than the John Grisham films and the way that they shoot, like, the politics and the legality around some stuff. Like, I liked the fact that this showed from, like, crime to development of trial strategy to the implementation of the trial itself. And I get the whole, like, yeah, he's trying to live up to daddy, but I was relieved that we didn't get, like, him walking down the hall and seeing his dad's picture, you know, on the wall, and then him going back at the end and, like, staring at it and knowing that he made his dad proud, right? Like, a lesser movie would have done that shit.
I disagree. I think basically we get all those points in different form.
No.
I'll point them out as we go, but we get everything essentially you just described without the actual picture. We get everything. I was waiting for this to be like Star Wars and to get Daddy's, like, Force Ghost out there at the end of the trial and be like, you've done well, my son, as he's walking out of the courtroom.
Ash mentioned those John Grisham movies. I think what makes this really pop, what keeps it lively, what makes it better and sets it apart is that Sorkin dialogue. Like, A Few Good Men was a reminder that I really need to dig deeper into Aaron Sorkin's library because I haven't watched a lot of what he's done, but I love his dialogue writing style. He's behind The West Wing, The Newsroom, Sports Nights. These are all series that would really appeal to me, and I don't know why I haven't gotten around to watching them. I just love the way he delivers these punchy, witty lines, this dialogue between Demi Moore and Tom Cruise and Kevin Pollak that just sings. And you know it's unrealistically clever. Like, nobody is this quick. But much like a Frank Capra movie, you just want to live in a world where people are this quick and do talk like this because it's so entertaining.
I mean, you can see the DNA, the Sorkin DNA in this. We have the Jessep at the end, that huge monologue. If you've watched Newsroom, incredible show. You get the Will McAvoy monologue in the beginning, the first episode that sets the series off. Made me feel insecure at the time because I'm watching this and I'm like, shit, do intelligent people really sit down and have these conversations? Are they that quick? Can they reference things from history? Am I the only one who would be struggling to live in this world?
Now I get to pull out my experience.
Oh,
Big
yeah.
D, 13 years in a newsroom. No. Nobody talked like this. I mean, we did have very heated discussions with publisher or when the editors got together in a closed room. But it was nothing like the clips I've seen from Newsroom that King B forced me to watch.
I think that's the thing about Sorkin, though, is like Newsroom is great in clips. I don't know if it's great like as a standalone, like full episode. Like Sorkin is so good in bursts. He's not necessarily so great across, which is why you're going to take a turn in a second and talk about how this movie's cheesy. Like he runs out of steam eventually because no one is that clever. It's like the opposite. It's almost like a more intellectual elitism version of like a Kevin Smith film. And the way that dialogue goes back and forth between each other, it just runs out of steam eventually. Now, I personally think The West Wing was a great show, but even that ran out of steam. I think Sorkin's best work is in films like The Social Network. I mean, that was a really fantastic script. Molly's Game is a fantastic script. Randomly, The American President is a really fantastic script, but all of his movies eventually run out of steam. And I think that's part of the problem here is that nobody has these kinds of conversations. And if they do, they're in short bursts. They last for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then you go back to talking about, like inane shit.
Now, Jeff from Canada is a gentleman, and in all the things he praised about this movie, he never brought up Demi Moore. I am not that gentleman, so I'm going to talk about that. Demi Moore looks tight in this movie, whether she's wearing a goofy outfit, and they are goofy, or her Navy officer's blouse and white skirt. She looks great. I'm never going to complain about Demi Moore in anything tight, but I was surprised to learn while watching this movie that the Navy required women officers to pack a skirt until 2004. They could literally be ordered to wear a skirt for special occasions, so they had to have one on hand at all times. And I can't imagine how prior to 2004, they expected sailors to treat one another as equals when some of them have their asses pressed into form-fitting pencil skirts. And to be clear, skirts are still allowed now, but it's entirely optional, which is the way it always should have been.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I was wondering that throughout. I wondered two things. One, how long it took her to do her hair every day and how she got her braids up by herself, because I can't imagine that being easy, and why she never took them down even when she's like there, like hammering crabs with him on the weekend. And then the second was the skirts. And if you've ever worn a pencil skirt, which I'm assuming neither of you have, you have very little mobility because like they're tight as hell and they fall at a certain point below like on your leg to where it makes it really difficult to do anything productive other than sit at a desk. And that just makes no sense for somebody in the military.
But come on, this is not a combat skirt. It's not like you're expecting you're not expecting them to go out into the field. They're not going to do like any low crawling in these.
It doesn't matter. They're still having to walk and like pick up papers and talk to people.
It's their dress uniform. It's for ceremonies. It's for like a business attire.
Okay, sure. So they should have worn pantyhose too, because they needed that for their dress uniform.
If it's accepted, can I go into my office or a general office wearing a pencil skirt? If they had a large one that fit me, would that be acceptable?
Be required to wear one when I come visit you there?
Well, that's the whole part of having a uniform and about following orders. You use it as a punchline to a joke, Ash. Some people live by that skirt, by that uniform.
So that's not the freedom I would want to be fighting for.
Here's an additional mindfuck. They had standard issue purses until 2004 as well. You couldn't bring your own purse. They called it like the granny bag or something like that. And it's hideous.
Yeah, it's a uniform.
But their uniform shouldn't be any different. It should look exactly the same as the dude's uniform.
Yeah, the Navy didn't have a standard wallet or standard underwear for men.
When I go to McDonald's, they're all wearing uniforms and the girls aren't serving fries in their Mennonite skirts.
I secretly think that some of the women would push back. I think I think it'd be more comfortable. Get a little breeze going.
I'm telling you, a pencil skirt is nowhere near as comfortable as pants.
Yeah, so you have a choice. Unless it's that formal occasion where you're ordered to wear it, and it's probably just for a couple hours.
Oh my God.
Well, Kaffee and Galloway questioned Jessep and others at Guantanamo Bay. Jessep claims Santiago is to be transferred the next day. When Kaffee negotiates a plea bargain with the prosecutor, Captain Jack Ross, Dawson and Downey refuse. Dawson believes it is dishonorable to pursue a plea bargain rather than defend their actions at trial. Kaffee intends to get removed as counsel as he thinks the trial is pointless. At the arraignment, Kaffee unexpectedly enters a plea of not guilty for the defendants. He tells Galloway that he was chosen to handle the case because he was expected to accept the plea, and the matter would then be kept quiet.
So, Ash, here is where your Force Ghost dad, Kaffee, comes into play. They go down to Cuba. We start to learn through other people's stories about Danny's famous father, how he stood for something, how he made a lot of enemies, that he felt he did what was right. He fought for civil rights. He worked in the integration of schools. This became important because Jessep tries to bully him. He's going to bully the three of them to just shut this case down, move away, make their life easier. And Danny realizes that he would actually be a disappointment in his father's eyes, that the ghost is watching him, what he's going to choose to do. And he realized he's got to make the decision for the first time that he's actually going to go through with the case. And it's because Jessep bullies him. He realizes, why are you appointing me to this case? Is it because I've had no backbone and I will just plea out everything? It's important at this moment that this is where he starts the turn to actually becoming the story's hero.
Yeah, and at this moment, the story goes from reasonable military or legal drama or character sketch of Kaffee or whatever you want to call it into fucking Paul Bunyan tall tale territory. His dad fought for civil rights. I was expecting to be like, his dad freed the blacks. Like, where does it stop? And simultaneously, as our heroes are visiting Colonel Jessep at Guantanamo Bay, and Tom Cruise and Demi Moore are putting together a great movie, in walks fucking Jack Nicholson trying to out-Jack everyone. He's a Marine Corps colonel about to be promoted to a massive national post. There has been a death on his base. 2 of his Marines are on trial. And what does he do? He decides to ham it up. There's hubris. I get that.
Yeah.
And then there's an actor overdoing it. And the script is fine. Jack Nicholson could have said the same things in a much less Jack way and been so much more effective.
I utterly adore Eugene Lyons, but I'm going to say no, sir. I'm going to 100% disagree with you here because I found this Jack Nicholson to be the Jack Nicholson we always need. I thought he was terrifying in this movie. When he makes those sexual harassment comments toward Demi Moore, like, it's so frightening. And this is what guys do. The exact way, that brazenness with the way he does it is what sexual harassment really feels like in the real world. And it made every part of my skin crawl. It made me nauseated. Tom Cruise's reaction to it, like being just like, what the fuck is happening? And showing how awful this guy is made it even more effective. And yes, I will give you this. This is Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson here. But I think this movie is a dud without Jack Nicholson doing what he does with this role. It's needed. And I think he's the perfect villain playing a really fun villain for him.
Gene, you need this. You need him to be cavalier. He didn't get to the point in his career he is now by playing the buttoned up commander. He has to do something to differentiate himself. There's a reason why he advanced and Markinson's didn't. And I used to be at Fort Campbell when we had General Petraeus. There's been nobody who's had a more spectacular fall than that man. And that man was banging people around post, cheating on his wife. He was doing some crazy shit. If Petraeus was in this film, you would call bullshit and be like, nobody would do that. Yes. Generals and commanders on post, that's exactly what they do.
Guys, if Big D isn't on the next episode, now you know why. Ratting out General Petraeus.
He's
Santiago'd. Yeah, Benedict Arnold.
He did it himself. Why do you think he was disgraced and had to eventually stop serving? He's a dirtbag.
Well, I know you guys have mentioned, Big D, you think this is all awakening for Kaffee thing. I guess I just have a secret desire to have gone the route I had intended to go in my life, which was to be a lawyer. And maybe I just love legal proceedings and trial films. I'm also about to argue my first case ever because we are suing a contractor. So I have to argue in small claims court. Super excited about it. I've been prepping for hours. But for me here, a lot of trial movies, I think they can make the trials feel really unrealistic, but I liked this one. I thought it hit the nail on the head for what I feel like proceedings could look like. They ran at a normal pace. Like the trial felt unwinnable in a really sane way. Like it wasn't unwinnable because like the guy was found, you know, he woke up next to the bloodied person in bed next to him. So everybody assumed he did it, right? Like there was actually some believable, reasonable doubt. I like that Kaffee isn't just some whiny attorney, and the evidence they collect makes sense. Like there isn't some crazy smart detective shit where all of a sudden they develop a new technology and find like, you know, the one phone number that existed that he called 45 years ago on a rotary phone. Like nothing ridiculous happens. And for me, that makes it kind of cool. I like the way they prove the code red. I like the way they show that preparing for trials fucking sucks and it's just a lot of paperwork and highlighting of numbers. And I thought it was believable.
You wanted bickering, Jeff? Here's your bickering. Ash, I'm not a lawyer, but this felt about as real to me as Liar Liar. Everyone is just hammering on topics, looking for a crack in the testimony when there are far more fundamental things that Kaffee fails to do because he's a shitty lawyer. Okay, you've got a medical expert saying that the guy was poisoned, even though there's no evidence of poison. I don't know, maybe get your own medical expert to counter the prosecution's expert. Seems pretty basic. Find a doctor who will testify that lactic acidosis can occur without poison. Fucking depose Markinson. They post up marshals outside his room because they're worried about his safety. Is there recording equipment in 1992? Could you just record him giving a testimony so if anything happens to him, you have that document? No, I'm just going to yell at people on the stand.
Oh, Gene, there's a flaw in your logic. You're assuming that we've seen every moment of court testimony. This film is 2 hours. So you think the entire case over the span of days took less than 50 minutes?
Well, yeah, they adjourn for a recess every 5 seconds.
So, Gene, I'm going to put you on the stand here. Gene Lyons, would you say it is possible that there was a rebuttal doctor who testified that we did not see?
No.
Yes.
You're completely wrong. There is that chance.
Well, I also think even if there wasn't that, I thought that his redirect on the doctor was enough to provide reasonable doubt. Now, Demi Moore comes in and fucks it up gloriously, but I also think she does it in a way that's really believable. But I think that would have been enough. I don't think he needed to call anyone. I think that him showing that much reasonable doubt on the stand was fine. And come on, Kevin Bacon was the lawyer that sucked in this fucking movie. It wasn't Kaffee.
I mean, Gene, you have to respect the redirect on the question about where in the Marine manual, where in the base manual is code red listed. And he redirects and says, can you tell me where the mess hall is? You're telling me you didn't eat? Oh, I ate 3 square. He is good. He's learning. He's getting his feet. This is the first time he's been in the courtroom. And you got to remember that it's not about the case. This was a play. In a play, they're not going to show you every detailed, screwed up like moment of testimony. You're going to see the highlights. That's what we're seeing because this is a play playing out. But again, this is a vehicle for Danny to grow. Kaffee is growing. He's becoming more confident. He's developing his technique. He's starting to get out of his dad's shadow. And I think that's more important than whether or not the doctor came in to rebuke the fact that acidosis could be from natural cause.
Well, Markinson meets Kaffee in secret and says that Jessep never ordered a transfer for Santiago. Dawson is portrayed in a good light, and the defense, through Downey, proves that code reds had been ordered before. Markinson, ashamed that he failed to protect a Marine under his command, commits suicide before he can testify. Without Markinson's testimony, Kaffee believes the case lost. Galloway encourages Kaffee to call Jessep as a witness, despite the risk of being court-martialed for challenging a high-ranking officer.
Up until this point, I have kind of fawned all over this movie, but sadly, friends, it is not perfect. And this is where we get into a part of the film that just kind of is a bummer for me. And personally, I believe the most unrealistic part of this movie, which is the entirety of the Matheson storyline. First of all, he just goes missing. And there's that convenient line where it's like, well, if he's gone, he says we're not going to find him. So are you looking? Are they just letting him go AWOL? Because they don't seem that concerned about it. And then he shows up in the back of Tom Cruise's car because he left it open. And then you're going to let him sit in a hotel room by himself. And more so than that, out of all the things he's requested He's requested his full dress uniform. Like, of all the random things, that's what he wants there. Why? And then he has a gun. Again, why are you letting him have that? It's obvious that they just needed a way for there to be more drama at the end of this movie. So the dude commits suicide. And in truth, what's sad about it is that their case works without him. They don't need Matheson. You could have just had Kiefer, who's in a fun little, racist Marine role here. And then you've got Jack Nicholson. Did you make that face because he's racist?
Yeah.
No.
I'm just assuming he's racist because of his
definitely.
accent.
Why? What does he say he's racist?
He's the character from A Time to Kill.
Yeah, that's
when
what
he
he
says
feels like to
he
me
made
too.
some. Yeah, he made some enemies in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
It's geography.
No, he's against the
Well, by
integration
that
of schools.
rationale, you guys are
He's
both.
against the integration to school.
He was. That's what he meant. That's what he was referencing in that. He made
Maybe
some
it's where-
enemies
it's where
in your
he's
neck of the
from. Well, then, Big D, you're part of the red state.
Yeah, I am. That's where I'm from.
But it doesn't mean he voted that way.
No, but it's clear he only answers to God and to the commander. That's all he answers to.
Yeah,
So
I agree. He talks about people being weak. I don't know. The point, racist or not, you could have just had Kiefer, whether he's a racist or not. And then you don't need Matheson at all. You just have a strong case. Let it sit on its own. I think it's excess. I think it takes away from an otherwise really good film. And I think it shows Aaron Sorkin kind of in those new moments of him trying to really figure out and hone his skills in terms of writing. Like we're seeing that here because this is fat that should have been cut.
Okay, so before we get the actuallys, I'm going to get this out there. It was Matthew Markinson's. So when Markinson. So
is it not Matheson?
No, it's Matthew.
Should I
Markinson.
totally redo that?
Hell
whole word?
no.
Nope.
No chance.
Sorry.
No chance. No, you're completely fine. But listen.
No, because then we're going to get some shit about how I don't actually watch the films.
You do.
Like they're going to
listen.
say how fucking awful I am
No,
because I said
stop
it was
it.
wrong. You guys do a movie podcast?
No, listen. Markinson. He is built up in this film to be a legend. He's a ghost. If he doesn't want to be found, you're not going to find him. He's at this point, he's like a 48-year-old out of shape dude. You're going to find him. You're going to find him. But he is a plot convenience. He's not a character. If Markinson's lives, then he's going to be forced to testify. Then Danny never gets to cross-examine Jessep. He doesn't have the chance to present in court and to break out and to become himself. You needed him to die so they get the information. But then they also, it's not enough for them to convict. They need that final confrontation.
Not to speak for Asher, but I think her point is, what if he just disappeared and that was it? Or maybe he just never talked about it. He doesn't have to do any of this stuff.
You
They
don't have
need to
to
be a
do
non-character.
No, they don't. They don't need it. He could have
Ash.
still put Jessep on the stand.
Ash, you're missing. They did not know the fact that there was an 11 o'clock flight. They did not know the fact that he doctored the logbooks.
So you write into the plot, hey guys, look at this log. There's an 11 o'clock flight.
But he knew Jessep would fix it.
Or alternatively, he shows up and he's like, hey, there was an 11 o'clock flight, like a deep throat. And then he's like, that's it. I'm out of here. Poof. He throws a ninja bomb and he's gone.
But again, he needed to give Danny another slight push that he's willing to kill himself because he failed at his duty and he failed to protect those that needed it.
Oh my God. But like that letter, like when he's reading that suicide letter, he's dead because I wasn't strong enough to save him. Okay.
Is Galloway okay?
Yeah.
This woman,
No.
a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, meets this fucking prick lieutenant who has been handed the case that she wanted. He is dismissive toward her. And when she confronts him, he says, I think I'm sexually aroused. Then she travels to Gitmo, where, as Ash mentioned, Jessep says nothing is sexier than saluting a woman officer in the morning. And he tells Kaffee he's missing out if he doesn't get a blowjob from her. Kaffee doesn't stand up for her. Weinberg doesn't stand up for her. They just let it go. And I get that she didn't want to let Jessep shake her, right? She stays the course. But how the fuck does she consider these two douchebags people that she likes, or Kaffee a dude that she wants to support and admire? Why is she encouraging him to be involved with this case at all? She'd tell him to fuck off.
Okay. I think you're being a little unfair here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
You're just
think
charmed by Tom Cruise.
No, I've not been Scientologized. I think that he couldn't stand up for her here because he's no one on the leadership ladder compared to Jessep. So it makes no sense for him. He's going to get thrown like in the brig for saying something in support. And more so than that, in that moment, she just keeps going. And nothing is more insulting as a woman than having a dude come in to defend you when you're making very clear you don't need defending. And I feel like Galloway here has made very clear that she is standing her ground and doesn't need defending. She doesn't need him to come in and save her. And as far as encouraging him, because he's charming as fuck. That's why. It's why she takes him out to sushi. Well, it's not sushi, it's crabby. She takes him out to crab and, you know, she goes to his house a lot and she thinks he's kind of cute. Like, I get it.
Gene, I don't know how the chain of command or orders worked in your junior ROTC. Did you get to choose which orders and say, no, we're not going to go do that because that's not right?
No, but if Lieutenant Colonel Byrd, our aerospace science instructor, had made a sexist comment or a sexual comment toward another cadet, I would say, Lieutenant Byrd, that is completely out of line.
It's because you're kids. You're kids in the real world. You're not in Gitmo. You're not. So in, like, again, this is a cult, Gene. When you're in the bubble of the military and you're on base and you're in combat arms, sexism, it is ingrained in you. It is ingrained in the leadership. Why do you think that rapes and sexual assaults never got fixed? Because it was never reported out of the bubble. We keep it in-house. We deal with it. We make it so it disappeared. I never served with a single female soldier. My first sergeant used to say in front of everybody, I'm never going to have a split tail running around to distract you fuckers. Yeah, that was in 2003. So I doubt it's gotten any better.
Sorry, innocent baby angel Gene needs that term explained to him.
A split tail, it's like a deer. Because they have a vagina.
Yeah, but a split tail is also, it's a female deer.
Oh, no. Mm-hmm. In court, Kaffee points out a contradiction in Jessep's testimony by asking why Santiago was in danger if Jessep had ordered his men to leave him alone. Disgusted by Kaffee's attitude, Jessep rants about his importance to national security and admits he ordered the code red. Jessep tries to leave the courtroom but is arrested. Dawson and Downey are cleared of the murder and conspiracy charges but found guilty of conduct unbecoming and will be dishonorably discharged.
All right. Everyone knows and is waiting in this movie for the big you can't handle the truth scene. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize how little Jack Nicholson was actually in this movie because he's not in it a lot. He's in that little scene in the beginning where he reads the letter. He's in the scene where they come to Cuba, and then he's in the courtroom scene, and that's it. And so you're waiting for him to come back on. And I have to say, I was very pleased to see that, for me at least, the scene still held up. I think Cruise is good. I think Jack Nicholson delivers. And you get why Jack Nicholson's character loses it. Cruise does a great job with the dialogue leading him into the explosion. He just cannot help himself. He just says the shit he knows he's not supposed to say. And I've been in this situation before where I've exploded in this way and said the shit I'm not supposed to say and told someone the actual truth that they were not ready for and that they could not handle. And I think most people have. And I think it would have happened in this scene. But more so than that, I like that the buildup, it kind of comes down a bit, and then the actual big moment is what happens afterward. I think Jack Nicholson does such a great job of showing how surprised Jessep is that he's being arrested, because the guy's got so much hubris about him. It feels good to see him being carted off and being arrested.
And Tom Cruise is like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
At this point in the movie, I was desperately searching for some mustard to go on the ham sandwich that the film devolved into. They were desperate to make lawyering interesting, so they went to the oldest trick in the book. Big D alluded to it, right? The Matlock moment. Lawyer baits witness into slipping up and saying the wrong thing. Come on. This doesn't happen.
No, but he doesn't slip up. He knows that it's a flaw. He knows that he can get Jessep to say it because it's what Jessep believes. Jessep is embarrassed that Kaffee is in the same military, that he wears that uniform. And I think the big moment, the big climax of this film is not Jessep's speech. It's not that you want the truth. You need me on that wall. You want me on the wall. That's not it. This time I realized the pinnacle of the movie is where Daniel is struggling. He's hit the point where Jessep doesn't seem like he's going to crack, where they got the Air Force guys in the back. He's got Joe there looking at him, and he remembers what Joe said. Hey, if he's not going to say it, don't push it. He has second thoughts. He remembers Weinberg again pussying out and being like, no, I wouldn't do it. Your father wouldn't do it. But it's more important, what would you do? In that moment, it slows down. And on this viewing, it seemed like it was forever. You see the wheels turning. He's trying to think, what do I do? This is career suicide. Do I push forward? He makes that choice. He leans in, and that's when he gives them the, did you order it? He's finally, for once, going to stand up for something and do what he feels is right, even if it costs him his career.
I take it back. This movie isn't a ham sandwich. It is a fucking cheese fest. What you just described is embarrassing, right? And it gets worse from there. The movie utterly falls apart when Dawson and Downey are found guilty of conduct unbecoming, which they absolutely were guilty of. What they did was fucking appalling. And by the way, Kaffee should have mentioned that they're going to get nailed with that anyway. Like, even if they win the case, they're not getting away with the conduct unbecoming. They're going to get a dishonorable discharge anyway. So just take the fucking plea deal. But beyond that, we get fucking Downey doing his best simple Jack. I don't understand what this means. We're good boys. Why are they saying we're bad? Ain't we Marines no more? And then Kaffee stops Dawson on his way out of the courtroom. And he's like, you don't need a patch on your arm to have honor. And the cherry on top of this fucking cheesecake is Dawson coming to attention. What? Officer on deck and saluting. What the fuck am I watching here?
Oh, Gene, you're missing the best part. There's also the swelling, like, inspirational score. As it's like, it's coming up to a crescendo. And then you're reminded Santiago was killed.
Yes.
Their career, their life is over. Nothing again was achieved other than if the film was all about Caffrey's ascension. If it's about Caffrey and not Santiago, then this is the pinnacle. He has broken through. This is his victory.
No. And his ascension, what? Like, it's like the Antichrist? Like, no.
To legal eagle. He's now going to be like the
I
the
don't
big guy.
buy either of you. First of all, Gene, yes, it's a cheese fest, but it's a fun cheese fest. It hits you in the feels. I actually was sitting there going, oh man, we're going to have to watch their little faces when they find out they're not Marines anymore. And then they pan over and they're not Marines anymore. And it killed me for them because these are boys that were put upon. Like, they were given an order and they followed it because they were good Marines. They were in the cult. I felt really badly for them. And he was not simple Jack. This poor kid, he's just like, oh, okay. And then he goes off and does his paperwork and he goes home with Aunt Jenny.
No.
But I loved it when he saluted, and I was good with it until, like Big D's saying, the inspirational score kicks up, and then the end comes across the screen in fucking cursive writing. And it's like, they didn't need to tell us. Like, we were all aware it was the curtain call. But no, I liked it. I thought it was moving. I don't know. What's wrong with me?
I was on board until the music.
But I am not on board with this Kaffee thing. I think this is just a good courtroom thing. No. And I'll be honest, I forgot that Tom Cruise's character is so nervous. Like, when his hand's shaking before, like, he goes up there to take him on, I was like, you steel yourself, Kaffee. Get your thinking back. It's all going to be okay.
And how the fuck is Aunt Jenny not there for this big moment? You know,
Aunt Jenny was there.
I didn't see her.
Aunt Jenny was there next to the other guy's parents.
Are you sure?
I'm positive she's on the far
She didn't give him a
right.
supportive hug. Like, at least give, like, that could have, Gene, a wink to Kaffee. Like, hey, thank you. You saved him. I know I wanted somebody older, but you actually came through. That would have been extra cheesy.
Well, they would have had to hold the end.
Yes, they would.
Well, thankfully, now is the time when we give our Shat score for A Few Good Men. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get our perspective. But 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is apparently getting a blowjob from a superior officer, which, by the way, I did, and it wasn't all that. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It's when you're carrying out an innocent little code red, and you end up with blood all over the bed and a dead private on your hands. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for A Few Good Men?
I will not be embarrassed in the least to say I loved every moment of this film, even though it's cheesy, even though it's predictable, even though it doesn't make sense. Sometimes I thought the performances are exceptional. It made my mother and father happy. I loved it. Ash's family loved it. A family of Iranian immigrants loved it. Everyone loved it, Gene. Everyone except for you now in your sour old age. This is a great film. It's not perfect. It is up there on, if there's a Mount Rushmore of Shat and we got like maybe 10, 15 heads, I'd put this up there. This is a 0.5 white movie. This is great.
Big mountain.
How fucking big is our Mount Rushmore?
They're smaller heads. I would give more space. Smaller heads.
And whose head? Just like the poster of this film?
It's
like Tom Cruise,
Kaffee's
Jack
head.
Nicholson, and
Kaffee's
Demi
head.
Moore?
Yeah, Kaffee's head. He did all the work. Fucking Weinberg did nothing.
Well, since it is about his ascension.
It is.
Well, that's respectable. Well, I love this movie as well. I thought it was quite good. The acting was great. The legal dialogue and the scenes were intense. Jack was awesome. And it moved fast. This movie didn't drag for me at all. I felt like it was really well paced. Maybe it was just because I was watching it to survive watching Dead Man. And so this one felt like it was moving 1,000 miles a minute comparatively. It's great, but it's not perfect. I thought the Markinson stuff was really unnecessary. I do think that maybe some of the cheese at the end for certain people could be kind of dumb. I thought the end was unnecessary. I didn't like that Demi's hair never changed. Like there were little moments that I thought made it not quite perfect, but it's fucking great. This is a great movie. And so I think it's way better than average. And I'm giving it 1.5 wipes.
Well, it's a half wipe from Big D and 1.5 wipes from Ash. A Few Good Men started out so strong. I agree with you until that point, but it stumbled ass backward across the finish line with melodramatic performances, cheeseball signs of mutual respect, and a vintage Matlock ending that just wasn't earned. The cast is terrific, don't get me wrong. And the dialogue before we meet Jessep is so solid. But Jack Nicholson and oddly Kiefer Sutherland are laughably self-indulgent in this one. It's 2.25 wipes for me.
No, this is a travesty. This is awful. This is up there with like Blade Runner level.
My score is just below Ash's.
Whatever. I'm talking about the final score here. Gene, with the final wipe score of 1.4166 repeating wipes, this is now in the 87 spot with Total Recall, The Mummy, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, One Crazy Summer, and Christine.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great, except for Christine. I think that this is great. I think it belongs there. It doesn't belong in the top 50, but it belongs in the top 100.
Yeah, who was the Christine homer? Was that me?
Yeah, it was you. That was a 2-wiper for you. Worst. Yep. Most of them, you're the worst, but except for Fear and Loathing, I didn't like that much. But
you hear that, listeners? Who's the worst? Who's the harshest?
Yeah, it's Gene Lyons.
Wait, what did I give Christine?
Christine, you gave it a 1.5.
There we go. So maybe I did think it was as good as this.
Oh, actually, shit, I fucked up. I'm sorry, Gene.
Yeah.
You're not the worst. It's Ash. Ash is Ash is a 2. Gene was a 1.5.
Hey, listeners, don't listen to this. This is the one time that's true.
Hey, it's a top 100 film. I think it's better than that. It's better than that in my memory. So
I liked it.
On to our next duty station.
I'm just glad Big D was able to say Christine without going, pew, pew. All right, well, going along with our military-themed episode, we do have 2 voicemails coming in from the military itself. Our first one comes from Tim in Cedar Rapids.
Hey, Big D, Ash, and Gene. This is Tim in Cedar Rapids. Thanks for everything you guys do. It's a great show. Really appreciate it. Just got done listening to First Blood Big D.
Oh, no.
I love you, man, but I really gotta ask. I really gotta ask you to question your point of view on National Guard. You guys talked a lot about veterans. Talked a lot about PTSD. I know you had your experiences. You're an active duty guy. I'm just finished up 20 years Iowa Army National Guard. I've got 2 years in Iraq, and National Guard and Reserve are veterans too, and they are suffering PTSD, and we have combat arms just like you guys have in active duty. Iowa Army National Guard has infantry, engineers, cav. So just think about it, man, when you're talking about your whole question about who you would have operate on you. When we MOB, we do 3 to 6 months of training at a MOB station before we deploy to theater of operations. So, I love you guys, and I'm not gonna say you get your carte blanche for being active duty, and that's great. Thank you for your service. But please think about it when you're talking about National Guard and Reserve, because those are veterans too. Okay. All right. Love you guys. You're doing awesome. Keep it up.
Okay, I will take the L on that. That is a complete failure on my part. If you've deployed, hell yes, I totally apologize. Yes, when you deploy, you're in the same shit. So I did not mean to do that. And that was unfair of me. I should have had a more thorough explanation and thought it out more. So I do apologize. Yes, if you deploy actively and you're if you're in an active combat zone, of course, it's the exact same thing. And yes, PTSD affects everybody. So I apologize about that. I will try to think better. I was just thinking back in the early 80s, those dudes filling sandbags and working at the department store but I fucked up. That's my bad.
Big D, don't feel too bad. We all have our high dramatic moments. Thanks, Tim, for calling in. Next up, we have one from Patrick D in Hawaii.
Hey, Shat Crew. It's Patrick D, Patrick and Jen in Hawaii. Just want to say thank you so much. We love your podcast. It's so fun to hear you guys go back and forth, and the research you do into your movies. It really makes for a phenomenal podcast. Most recently, I listened to Rambo First Blood. I'm a couple weeks behind on listening to you guys. But near the end, you guys talked about military mental health, and I want to say thank you. Big D as a veteran and me as active duty service member. It's tough. It's hard what we do and time away from the family and the challenges we've been exposed to. And you guys highlighted and support us military members, and I wanted to say thank you so much. Just bought some swag off your website because I want to show support to you guys. And thank you for what you do. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Again, I feel like even a bigger hypocrite that on an episode where I was really emphasizing using the VA and actually going in and getting help, and it's not a weakness, that I disparaged the National Guard. I feel like Jessep did when he finds out that Kaffee Sr. died. All I'm going to say is, don't I feel like an asshole now?
And thank you, Patrick and Jen, for being such big supporters of the pod for years. And the fact that you bought merch from us, I feel like we should be the ones buying merch from you for all of your tireless support. So thank you guys so much. And thanks for calling in. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, Eddie convinces 3 friends to pool funds for a high-stakes poker game against local crime boss Hatchet Harry. Harry cheats and Eddie loses, giving him a week to pay back £500,000 or hand over his father's pub. Desperate, Eddie and his friends wait for their neighbors to rob some drug dealers, then rob the robbers in return. After both thefts, the number of interested criminal parties increases, with the 4 friends in dangerously over their heads. Commissioned by Mark T., came out in 1999, directed by Guy Ritchie, and this should be a good one.
Well, thank you, Mark, for commissioning the upcoming movie. Thank you, Jeff, for commissioning A Few Good Men. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. You can find all that information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
If you can't see value here today, you're not up here shopping, you're up here shoplifting.
Bacon.
Did you say £10? That's a bargain, I'll take one.
Eddie.
You two, join me in my office.
Fat Man.
Oi!
Soap. 4 friends.
That's my 25 grand.
With a money-making scheme.
You sure you can afford 25? I can afford it as long as I see it again.
That's quick.
You play cards tonight, son? With Harry?
Easy.
Oh, don't be silly, Dad.
And very expensive.
I'll see you. For $500,000?
All right, don't panic.
4 young fellas got in deep with the naked handle. I am panicking. They owed me £500,000.
So I'm going to give you 1 week to find it.
Let me tell you about that, you Harry.
If Harry don't kill you, then your father will.
I've got a plan. How heavy are these fellas?
We hit them as soon as they come back. But be prepared, waiting.
We're on.
Right, where was we?
Guns for show. Nice for a pro. Look, God knows how much of this stinking weight.
Is this a declaration of war?
A shitload of cash.
No one's responsible for this. Tortured.
And a traffic warden. obey traffic orders.